Finish it.
Termínalo. No lo entendió todavía.
No, it's not me too late. Yeah.
So fun. Good evening, everyone. Today is April 7th, 2025. This is the Committee on State Legislative Affairs. The time is 5:32. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Gonzalez,
Present.
Vice Chairman Reyes is absent, Councilwoman Peterson,
Present.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Present.
Councilwoman Graves is absent. We have 3 present and 2 absent. We have a quorum.
Fantastic. I want to just acknowledge some people in the room. Thank you to our city solicitor, Schwab, for being here. Also, thank you to city clerks and policy staff who joined us, policy analysts, Brendan, Authority, thank you for joining us, as well as our deputy policy director, Miguel Youngs, and intergovernmental affairs deputy director, Michael Napolitano. Thank you so much for joining us. So we'll read item number 1 into the record.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2024 H-7062 and act relating to towns and cities zoning ordinances. This matter is to be continued indefinitely.
Great, so there are 2 items, number 1 and 2, I think, that were introduced during the 24 legislative session. So if there's a motion to waive the readings of item 1 and 2, all right, moved by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. So we'll waive the readings of items 1 and 2, and we have a motion to also continue those items indefinitely.
Motion to continue indefinitely.
Motion to continue indefinitely by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, so I think we can move on to item number 3.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2024 H-7401 and Senate Bill 2024 S-2860 and act relating to education. The Paul W. Crowley Rhode Island Student Investment Initiative and House Bill 2024 H-7402 and Senate Bill 2024 S-2861 and act relating to education, state aid. This matter is to be continued indefinitely.
So this is, yes, another matter that would be continued indefinitely because it was introduced during the 24 legislative session. Third council member that would like to
Motion to
continue.
indefinitely.
So that's Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor? All those opposed? Item number 4.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5223 and act relating to state affairs and government, the Rhode Island Civil Rights Enforcement Act.
So this item offers support for H-5223, which would provide a cause of action for civil rights violations by the state and municipalities and a statute of limitations of 3 years. From the latter, the date of the rights violation or the date of the awareness of the violation of the approved party. This has fiscal implications as this legislation could open state up to potential liabilities, and there's also a resolution potentially to support this in the Senate if we so choose by amending this resolution to include S-538, and that's the Senate meeting. Any discussion on this item?
Yes, could I, sorry,
Sure.
could I possibly have something from the policy to go a little bit further on the explanation on this one?
If I may,
Yeah.
Thank you.
on 5223,
as noted, it would allow a person who has been harmed by the state of Rhode Island or one of its agents in the course of their duties, with the exception of certain acts of judicial and legislative action that would be considered immune, could, for the case of the municipality could then the municipality or the state could be sued in attempt to recover for the violation of their rights. It's one additional way of actually enforcing state civil rights laws.
Thank you for that.
And do we have a sense of who the sponsor is on that legislation?
Rep. Craven is the lead sponsor.
Okay, and this is, I think this is also a piece of legislation that is being sponsored. So that's in the House and in the Senate.
In terms of Providence reps, we've got Representative Morales and Representative Batista.
Okay. The recommendation would also be to amend this resolution to include the Senate companion bill. So if we decide to move forward on this, someone could make a potential motion to amend this resolution to include that Senate companion bill before it goes back to the entire council.
Sorry, trying to find the actual bill in there. You could make an amendment to include the Senate companion bill.
Yes. And Deputy Director, is this something that you want to speak on? And there are a couple other items that we'll take on a turn to come in and to get those statements.
What would the motion be? Move to,
Recommend amending the resolution.
I move to recommend amending the resolution to include the Senate companion bill S0538 to this resolution that we're doing.
Great, so motion to amend this resolution to include the Senate bill. Moved by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it, and then is there a recommendation to approve
I recommend.
passage to the entire council? Or a positive recommendation to the council?
As amended.
As
As
amended.
amended.
So that is made by Council Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any further discussion? Okay, the ayes have it. So I guess we're gonna take a couple items at a turn to accommodate the Deputy Director. I think he's gotta get going soon. So Deputy Director, which items on the docket are they?
It's item 17, an act relating to state affairs and government and build our tax credit.
So do we have a motion to yes, move item 17 up in the docket today?
Sorry.
Motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. So Madam Clerk, that's item number 17.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5741 and act relating to state affairs and government, rebuild Rhode Island tax credit.
Great, so Deputy Director, for your.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the committee. This resolution is in support of House Bill 5741. The sponsor is Deputy Speaker Hall. There will be a Senate companion, it will be introduced by Senator Bazillion, it just hasn't been posted yet. What it does is it seeks to amend the rebuild RI tax credit program. For those who don't know what that is, it's a tax credit program administered through Rhode Island Commerce. Started a couple years ago under the Raimondo administration, in a way to rebuild Rhode Island through manufacturing, historic rehabilitation, and mainly housing. This particular bill, we're looking to amend it to help with the kind of final phases to start building at 111 Westminster, but this legislation would apply to other projects other than just 111 Westminster. Specifically, what it does is it will decouple the sales and use tax rebate program from the maximum cap that a project can receive under the rebuild RI tax credit program. Right now, the cap is 15 million. However, if you also have a sales and use tax rebate and you hit that 15 million, you are not allowed to collect both. It used to be you could collect both, but the legislature changed that about 6-7 years ago. Obviously, the cost of construction has increased, inflation has increased. So this legislation will decouple the sales and use tax rebate and the maximum tax credit. The sales and use tax is, in this case, would be on construction supplies. Our view, the administration's view, is that if this project doesn't happen, the state's not getting that revenue anyway. This doesn't cost the province taxpayers anything. It is simply just an ability to have that project be able to capitalize on another tool in the toolbox to further incentivize to create the construction of that building. We estimate that it would be it's worth about $4.5 million for construction costs. And then, like I said, it would apply to other projects, but that, it's not just a dead giveaway. Any other project would still have to go through the Commerce Board and be vetted by them in order to get this rebuild tax credit and the sales industry thing. That I'll take any questions, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, questions from committee members, Councilor Peterson?
So please tell me if I have this wrong, because I'm not necessarily sure that I'm reading it correctly.
Mhm.
And I kind of suck at legalese, so bear with me. Is there a requirement, an affordability component required in this?
Yes,
Okay.
there is.
So if I'm not mistaken, it's at least 20%
Mhm.
that needs to be affordable housing in whatever development takes advantage of this.
That is correct, yes.
And according to this, it looks like the AMI is between 80 and 120%.
Yep.
Okay. So. Not be inclusive of any sales and use tax exemptions or 1%. That's my only question for now. I'm still trying to understand it.
Any additional questions from committee members? Additional
I have one, sorry.
Councilor Peterson?
Are there any other current projects outside of, it's clear as day that this is, you mentioned it, the Superman building, but is there any other potential project that could benefit from something like this currently, either in preparation or on the books, or?
None that I know of at this current time. I think what will happen is once this legislation passed, I would imagine developers should come out of the woodwork to realize that there's this potential for more benefit. I don't know of any off the top of my head, though, that I can state are actively looking as a result of this, but we wanted to ensure that it wasn't just another giveaway, and so we wanted to make sure that we were adding an affordability component if we were going to decouple the sales and use tax. But the way it's currently written, it would apply to other projects if someone wants to apply for it.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, is there a motion to move this item forward? This is item number 17. Is that a motion, Council?
Motion? Is she motioning?
Yeah.
You want me to say, I'll second, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so-
I'm trying to read
Made
it.
by Councilor
I apologize.
Hodges, seconded
Uh-huh.
by Councilor Peterson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? You guys have it. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll go back to item number 5.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5457 and activating to public records, access to public records.
So this item would offer support for H-5457, which would require the outstanding balances for previous records and documents requests from law enforcement agencies. And require that they be paid before records and documents under new requests are provided. Okay, learn more about this one, our policy staff, do we know like who the sponsor was of this item? The House and Senate.
Pardon me if I may, Representative Azanaro was the sponsor in the House, the sponsor. And
Senate companion been introduced?
there hasn't been a Senate companion introduced, as I'm aware of, however, should be noted that Representative Hall is profit celebration sponsor.
Any questions on this particular item? Do we have a council sponsor on this one? By request.
Sponsor.
Thank you.
Clarification.
Yeah.
And solicitor, this actually might be a question for me, just because I'm not familiar with the process.
Mhm.
Do we typically, support amending for unnumbered or unnamed Senate companion bills? Should we do that? Is that?
Oh, so you can always support anything as this body. So whether or not you choose to, as a group or as a body, say, we're not going to because there's no Senate one, you can, that's the point of the discussion. So you can always support it without a Senate companion. You can always add it later. You could always just say, assuming the Senate companion exists, it's completely up to you guys.
Got it, okay.
But it sounds like there will eventually be a Senate companion bill, it just hasn't been introduced yet.
Yeah, it seems that way. I haven't seen one introduced yet.
So I guess we have 2 options here. I mean, we do it all the time where we pass just House bills.
Yeah,
Without their Senate companion bills. But if people don't feel comfortable moving forward with this, or we want to wait until the Senate companion bill, we could, wait until it gets introduced and then continue this item, or we could just pass it. It doesn't do much harm to just pass it now. In fact, it might actually spur more action in terms of the Senate companion bill being introduced, because the council is essentially
Yeah.
saying we support that, the House version.
I was just asking for clarification if there isn't, a designated sponsor, Senate, companion bill. It was just more of a clarification and understanding of our process, but, I'm okay with,
Great,
so we need to amend it, right?
so we would amend to include the unnumbered Senate companion bill, which members feel.
I have put into a resolution at some point,
Mhm,
it's like simple,
Mm-hmm.
just that, and including its Senate companion bill,
mhm.
and then just goes to the state house, and they receive it saying.
Okay,
So even if the bill hasn't been
Yeah.
introduced, it would still say we support the Senate companion bill, even though it won't be numbered at that time.
Okay. So I'll make the motion to amend to include the unnumbered Senate companion bill to H 5457. I don't have my glasses, is that right? 545, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm like.
So motion made by Counselor Peterson,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Item number 6.
Resolution and
No, we need to pass it, right?
Yeah, now it's amended,
No,
so
it's
you want to
amended.
pass it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, now
pass it.
I'm sorry, yeah, we've got it, now we've got to make a motion to recommend approval to the council, so,
A motion. So
motion made by Counselor Peterson, seconded by Counselor Vargas, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, so we'll send the amended version to the council and recommend approval, including the unnumbered Senate companion bill. Okay, item number 6.
resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5161, joint resolution creating a special joint legislative commission to study public ownership, of public utility.
Okay, so, again, this is create a joint legislative commission to investigate a publicly owned utility carrier. This, of course, will have financial implications or fiscal implications. And I think the impetus here is to create more competition in the marketplace, as Rhode Island Energy. Has had a strong hold on the marketplace for a very long time and has rates are going up, and that's something that's been very challenging for many of our constituents out there. So this also does not have a Senate companion bill, so similar to the last resolution, we would amend this resolution to include an unnumbered Senate companion bill.
I think we should to amend this resolution to include an unnumbered Senate companion bill.
Great, so motion made by Counselor Peterson, seconded by Counselor Vargas, all those in favor? All those opposed? And then motion to recommend approval to the council on House Bill H 5161 and also the unnumbered Senate.
So,
So moved by Counselor Peterson, seconded by Counselor Vargas, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 7.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bills 2025 H-5200, an act relating to education, Rhode Island Early Educator Workforce Act.
So this item offers support for this bill, which would increase early child educator pay. And this request would increase appropriations if the General Assembly or the governor decides to include that in their budget. And again, for this one, the policy staff is recommending amending this resolution to include the Senate companion bill, which is S 0673. So we start with the amending resolution, and then we would then essentially pass if this committee decides to do so.
motion to amend the resolution to include S 0673.
There's a motion made by Counselor Peterson, seconded by Counselor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And then a motion to recommend approval to the council.
So moved. Okay.
So that motion is made by Counselor Peterson, seconded by Counselor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Any further discussion? Okay, so moved. So item number 8.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5321, an act relating to human services, Rhode Island Child Care for All Act.
So similarly, this bill would expand childcare access and limit maximum household spending on childcare to 7% of household income. It also establishes the Office for Early Learning. And the policy staff here recommends amending this resolution to include the unnumbered Senate companion bill.
I recommend amending to include the unnumbered Senate companion bill.
Thank you, Counselor Peterson. Motion made by Counselor Peterson, seconded by Counselor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Then a motion for, recommendation of approval to the council.
So moved.
Seconded by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 9.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5436, an act relating to criminal offenses, Rhode Island Assault Weapons Ban Act of 2025.
So this would prohibit the sale of assault weapons in Rhode Island. There are several advocacy groups that have been pushing for this out of the General Assembly. Policy staff here recommends amending this resolution to also include the Senate companion bill, which would be SO 358. And if we so decide to move this to the entire body, that's the recommendation of being moved to amend to include the Senate companion bill.
I'll motion to do that, to amend to include S0358, the Senate companion bill.
Motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. And we have a motion to recommend approval
So moved.
tonight. Okay, approval. Recommendation to approve, or recommendation to approve to the entire city council. Which moved by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 10.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of Senate Bill 2025 S-0092, an act relating to motor and other vehicles, rideshare or transportation network company vehicle surcharge.
Great, so this would create a 75% surcharge on every ride share thread. With the funds equally shared between a restricted account supporting street infrastructure improvements and the original municipality, and also a restricted account for RIPTA funding in accordance with the state transit master plan. So essentially, every surcharge would go back into infrastructure improvements, but also increasing funding for RIPTA. So it creates additional revenue sources for those purposes. This also does not have a House companion bill at the moment, but this resolution would potentially be amended if we so choose to include that unnumbered House companion bill.
Question.
Yes.
Just for clarification purposes, ride shares, Uber, Lyft, things like that.
That is correct.
Okay. What was the thing that we had to do? I make the motion to amend the resolution to include the unnumbered House companion bill.
Okay, so motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. And then a motion to recommend approval to the council.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 11.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of Senate Bill 2025 S-0117, an act relating to state affairs and government, Office of Health and Human Services.
So this would create transparency requirements for Medicaid, managed care organizations and pharmacy benefit managers. It would eliminate spread pricing, pass-through pricing, discriminatory treatment against non-affiliated pharmacies and pharmacists, ensure enrollees receive the full benefit of manufacturer incentives and discounts. And the policy staff also recommends amending this resolution to include the House bill, which is H-5463. And that's the companion bill for this Senate bill.
I make the motion to amend to include H-5463.
A motion made by Councilor Peterson,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. And then a motion to recommend approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, item number 12.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5029 and Senate Bill 2025 S-0125, an act relating to labor and labor relations minimum wages.
So these items have both the House and Senate containing bills, which is good. And this would gradually raise the minimum wage from $15 per hour to $20 per hour and $1 per hour increments annually between 2026 and 2030. So this is to increase the minimum wage here in Rhode Island. Councilor Peterson?
Policy and team, could you tell me if there's any other bill out there with regards to minimum wage increases for in this general assembly currently? Sorry for such a broad question, I'm just
No, okay.
double checking.
That's a good question.
I think there is a bill for maybe 20.
Yes, there is, there are several bills in this session,
Okay,
however. Only one of them has another, this bill matching House and Senate companion
Okay.
bill. And then in that case, you would have.
What else is there? What other ones?
There is 502 and 125, which we're looking at. We have Senate Bill 310 from Senator Quezada. And then here, 310 from Senator Quezada, which is similar but not quite the same. Again, based on the source that we're looking at, it ranks the text by similarity, and it's somewhat and not the same, and again. There are also bills increasing the minimum wage for employees who receive gratuity, so employees who are tipped.
okay,
Increasing it for its low sub minimum wage to equal the current minimum wage after a certain point, beginning at January 1st, 2031. And that is sponsored by Representative Felix. And then Representative Sanchez has a bill 5508 to increase the minimum wage on January 1st of 2026 to $22 an hour.
So we can either pass this, or if you don't feel comfortable passing this, we can continue this item, maybe wait to see what the other legislation is. Or someone could potentially introduce a resolution in support of those other General Assembly House bills or Senate bills, and then we can deliberate from there.
and I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, Councilor Peterson.
You said that Senator Quesada's 310 bill does it have a companion House bill?
It- Well,
No,
not according to this now.
okay. Um. Completely up to you guys, good either way, I would like to see if these other ones end up having house, companion bills, I think it's important to. Figure out which one, obviously, very much in support of increasing minimum wage, but. It's just my opinion, I don't know what you guys feel.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. Who are the House and Senate sponsors on this one?
Pardon me, Representative Bennett is the House sponsor on, the House lead sponsor on 5029. And Representatives Diaz and Slater are the Providence delegation members.
Bennett is only,
That is the lead.
what's interesting is that one from Senator Quezada is actually. As far as I can tell, Mike Bennett is
Is that
one
right?
from Senator Bennett, or Senator Burke. Which, I mean,
Really?
I suppose sometimes happens up there.
I'm good either way, whatever you guys decide, I'm happy to do, it's completely okay with me either way, I just thought that it might be good to No, if not, if you guys are for that way, I'm okay with that too.
I agree with this. Because, you know, raise it because everything is expensive right now. So $15,000 is not enough to pay. And maybe have it more the process and everything. So,
And I'm sure we could, support multiple bills
Yeah.
without it being
That's gonna be my next question.
conflicting. So I guess,
Especially, yeah,
yeah,
upon review. This bill from Senator Quezada is the same
it's identical.
language as this one from Senator Burke. $1 increments between 2026 and 2030. Yeah,
Okay,
and so they just sort of, there's a lot of legislators out there. Sometimes they,
Yes.
they're repetitive.
Also, if I may, the Senate bill listed here, 125, the lead sponsor is, as noted earlier, Senator Burke. And then the Providence delegation, Senators Vargas and Visalia are co-sponsors.
All right, so, anybody want to make a motion on this?
I'll make the motion to.
Motion to recommend approval, by Councilor Peterson, second by Councilor Vargas, all those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it, all right, item number 13.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5120 and Senate Bill 2025 S-0053, an act relating to insurance benefit determination and utilization review act.
So this has a House and Senate sponsor. This would prohibit prior authorization requirements for services offered by a primary care provider. So these prior authorization requirements by insurers have increased administrative overhead and reduced patient access to services that may prevent later chronic or serious illness. So I guess it's a way to sort of bypass having to go through a primary care provider, so people can get the services and the health support that they need.
I'm happy to make the motion to
Okay.
support, to recommend.
All right,
Second.
motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, item number 14.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5322, an act relating to education, teachers' retirement, see Title 16, Chapter 97, the Rhode Island Board of Education Act, and House Bill 2025 H-5339, an act relating to education, certification of teachers.
Okay, so this would temporarily extend the number of hours retired teachers, administrators, and staff to be able to work for school district annually. And remove standardized testing requirements from teaching certificate applicants respectively. This would help school districts to alleviate teacher shortages in both the immediate and longer term. Specifically get retired teachers back into the classroom to help school districts.
Temporary extended and time, so.
Oh, yeah, Councilor Vargas, that's a really good question. So,
The question is, how long will it be extending it to?
yeah,
Only through 2026. So it would be essentially for the entirety of the next school year.
okay, so this is basically for a year.
I'll make the recommendations to support.
Recommendation to approve.
Yes, that one.
So, made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 15.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5390 and Senate Bill 2025 S-0258, an act relating to state affairs and government, Department of Public Safety, Victims of Crime Trauma Informed Mobilization Act.
So this would create a state grant fund for crime victim support organizations and include $30 million in annual funding.
A motion to recommend.
Motion to recommend approval by Counselor Peterson, seconded by Counselor Vargas. All those in favor?
Right.
All those opposed? Let's have it. Item number 16.
Resolution endorsing and urging passage by the General Assembly of House Bill 2025 H-5432 and Senate Bill 2025 S-0054, an act relating to insurance coverage for mental illness and substance use disorders.
So similarly, this would eliminate pre-authorization requirements for in-network mental health and substance abuse disorder services. And eliminating these pre-authorization requirements imposed by insurers would create administrative, would alleviate administrative overhead for providers, which will allow people to receive the life-saving care that they need in a timely fashion. I think similar to the previous one, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, there are requirements that require authorization within network. So in order to see like a mental health practitioner or a facility that is helping with substance abuse, you'd have to kind of go through all of those hoops. And for the insurers, that creates overhead. And it delays the process for people who need those services. So I guess this is a way to lessen or decrease the barriers to service. I know with the primary care bill, there are so many people who are not able to get the health care that they need because they can't even find a primary care doctor. And a lot of people are struggling with that and and so I don't know if you guys want to add on to that.
No.
So this is similar, it's just for like mental health or substance abuse services.
Excuse me, if I may.
Yes,
Again,
of course.
this is maintain an insurance network, so your carriers, all your insurance carriers already covering this to a particular degree. However, because of the prior authorization, or the pre-authorization requirement, now you have an additional layer of administrative overhead. And that, again, makes, for example, mental health practitioners very reluctant to use insurance. In fact, we're seeing, and from just raw anecdotal experience, I don't have exacting data on this, a withdrawal of behavioral health practitioners and mental health practitioners from the use of insurance simply because when you have additional layers of administrative overhead, that's time that they're not spending with their patients. That's time that they're spending having to work with the insurer to be reimbursed for their services. And if, because of a pre-authorization requirement, that they are less likely to be paid for services that they want to provide and feel that they should be providing for their patients, they're less likely to accept insurance and instead insist that their patients pay cash, pay out of pocket,
Mhm.
which again, only increases burdens on the patient population.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
All right. Here,
I think it's a great help. I motion to recommend to council for approval.
great motion to recommend approval by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. And item number 18.
Resolution commending housing supply legislation in the Rhode Island General Assembly.
So these are pretty much all the bills, or not all the bills, but a portion of bills that have been introduced by the Speaker of the House to push for additional housing all across the state of Rhode Island. So H 584 would place the state building code code commissioner under the office of the state fire marshal and reduce the quorum requirement for the state building code standards committee so that things can get through the pipeline much faster. 85803 would expand the requirements for a unified electronic permitting program to include zoning, building, and planning, which is something that the legislature and the Speaker of the House feel would help to move housing projects across the state. H 5794 would eliminate a variety of barriers in the zoning enabling act with regards to subdivisions, improve streets, increase density. There's H 5801, which would amend the low and moderate income housing definitions. And there's H 5802, which would enable public hearings and the consideration of municipal capacities in a revised process for the development of state-owned properties and land for housing. And then lastly, H 5793, which would exempt newly constructed housing from tax levy increase limits where fulfilling a 10%, when they fulfill a 10% minimum affordable housing requirement. So these are all coming from the Speaker's office, and these are pieces of legislation that they deem would help move housing construction across the state and alleviate some of the housing crisis that we're experiencing. And I think most of these, frankly, are for other municipalities. Providence has really led the way on a lot of these regulations, and we've been able to adopt most of this, the state zoning laws, and we're still working through that with our comprehensive planning process, but we've been able to really lead the charge on that. I think it's more so for these other municipalities who don't have that kind of support, or they don't have like their own planning departments, and they have all these bureaucratic layers, which makes it impossible for housing construction sometimes to get off the ground.
I'm happy to support, I motion to recommend the approval.
Okay. And these would also, I think you would also have to amend these resolutions to include the non-member Senate containing bills that haven't all been introduced.
Do I have to take back my motion?
It's sitting right there, so you can, because it hasn't been voted on.
Okay.
But-
Well, I withdraw that motion.
There's some anybody for sure on that.
And I motion to amend the resolution to include their unnumbered Senate companion bills.
Motion made by Councilor Peterson,
Second.
Motion seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. And lastly, item, okay, and then motion to recommend approval to council.
So moved.
So motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. And lastly, item number 19.
Resolution supporting transit legislation currently before the General Assembly.
Okay, so these are all bills that would increase the appropriation to RIPTA. And provide some other operational support. So it's to require different pre-tax transportation benefits. It would be to place a ballot measure for the approval of $100 million capital improvement bond to increase the share of gas tax revenue that is received by RIPTA. Would essentially, these are all bills that would help to fund public transportation in the state. Specifically RIPTA.
This is 32 million for every year or?
This would be to, this is just for fiscal year 26, because they have and they're anticipating an operational shortfall. So they think they're gonna have less money this year, so this would be a request to increase the appropriation for RIPTA. So they could, continue with their service. I guess in the capacity that they're already operating.
Motion to recommend.
Okay, and these don't all have their Senate bill companions, so, should we- Oh, they do actually, yeah, all right,
This
yeah,
is a good.
they do.
Yeah, we got all that in it.
Okay, great,
And
awesome.
if I may, the only bill that doesn't have, is Senate Bill 092, which has no House companion presently.
Okay,
And that was also number 10.
So it's also number 10.
It's already been done, yeah.
oh, okay, so
You guys
that's
already did it.
all right, great, so, motion to recommend approval,
Yeah.
okay,
Second.
by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, and seeing that there is no further business on this agenda, motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Peterson, second by Councilor Vargas. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.